Alright, so this is going to be a little quick demonstration of quickSym, and that's this panel in the bottom right here. I've got in the scene just a regular polygon cube, and if I click this first button, single, it's going to create an instance of that cube, right? Or of whatever object I've selected. So if I manipulate one, the other, gets manipulated, and I can translate this, rotate it around, do whatever, and it'll happen again. Click single, like that. Do single again. I'll just move that over there. Alright, so you can kind of see how that works. This next button here is called break instance, and all I do is I select some instance objects that I don't want instance anymore, click on break instance. And now when I manipulate that, that will no longer impact those two. And I'll make the changes here a little bit more obvious. Whoops. My autosave just decided to happen. So we'll bevel that. Extrude that up. Just something. So that this is obviously different from that. Because the next button I want to talk about is convert to instance. So if I were to select one of my meshes, doesn't matter which one, I'll do this one here, and then I'll select these other two, I can convert that to an instance. And, those are now back in action. So that's those three buttons. Let's start again with a fresh scene, or with a fresh piece of geometry here. The next one I want to talk about are these linear options. So if I get rid of half of this mesh, linear X, I just click it, and now I've got an instance, across, mirrored on the X-axis. This linear X, by the way, is not determined based on world space, it's determined based on the object, right? So if I were to move this over here, rotate it around, say, and do linear X, you see that I still have, that mirroring happening, like that. Okay. So just to be aware of the flexibility of that. Same thing here, right? Like I've moved this up a little bit, and if I do linear Y, it'll bring that down. I can do linear X for that one, and so now I have one little quad section which affects all of that stuff. Right. And then linear Z, which is probably right because this mesh is. Let me just get rid of half of it here, right? And again, like I'll go to the top view so it's a little more obvious. I'm going to mirror it in Z like here, like that, and then I can go ahead and do the other ones. And now you can see that I've got just a little section here which impacts all of them. Okay. And I did that off the grid. I wouldn't normally model that way, but I just wanted to show you that these do work in that fashion. Just to be a little clearer about it. I can set it up in such a way. I'll turn that on. Oops. ZX. Right, where like I can basically model like 1/8 of this thing. and like the rest will be updated. Pretty neat. I like it. Okay, so that's the linear stuff. Radial, let me just begin again. A fresh piece of geometry. Same sort of concept where, I can do radial x like that, radial y, which will spin it on its y-axis. Let me move that down here, move the pivot there, radial y as such, and radial z, of course, which just does the remaining axes. This number of pieces right here is what changes that. So if I were to do, say, 8, do radial y, now I have 8 pieces. I'll get rid of that. Or maybe just scale this out. Just very rough right now. Yeah, so you can kind of see what's going on there. These dual linear things I never really mess around with so much, so I don't want to speak to them because I'm not too familiar with that stuff. I'll talk about this make chain thing right here. Let me just make sure I'm not missing anything at the bottom. I don't think so, no. Make chain would be, let me just create something real fast. Oops. Alright, so let's say that I take this, I make a duplicate of it, not an instance, but a duplicate, and I select, both of them, and I have 8, set to 8. Let me change it to 4. I'll do make chain. Now I have 4 pieces. If I were to change this to 6, now I have 6 pieces, right? And again, these are all instances. That's basically what make chain does. It's very similar to interactive chain. The difference is that, like these pieces, they don't update as I move them around. Whereas if let me just break this instance right here. Right, if I were to select these two, and instead of using make chain, I click on interactive chain, I can now click this, and it will update around, with translation, with rotation, right? Maybe even scale. Yeah, scaling will update as well. So you have some flexibility there with the interactive chain. This is, for the most part, fairly reliable. I have it's a very stable plugin, but if anything causes it to crash, it's this interactive chain thing here. So just be aware of that. Like when the geometry is super simple like this, you don't have a complicated hierarchy or whatever, it's been stable. But I have had that crash on me, so just a little bit of a warning with that one. I want to keep this video kind of short, so hopefully this will give you like the general idea of what quickSym does. Yeah, I hope that's helpful.